Welcome back to our listeners and viewers of the Responsible Edge podcast, brought to you by the Anti-Greenwash Charter. Today, we're going to be learning how reframing climate change as a health issue can change everything. Who cares, who acts, and how fast? We're reflecting on an article titled Reframing Climate Change as a Health Issue, which is a World Health Organization-led feature that spotlights global case studies from Mexico City to China, where health-centered storytelling has accelerated climate action. And to unpack all of this, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Louise Thomas, CEO of Air Aware Labs, a former UK diplomat and now a clean air entrepreneur. Louise is pioneering personal air quality insights to help everyone breathe better. Louise, it's absolutely fantastic to have snaffled you for an episode of The Responsible Edge and for you to join us today. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time.
Absolutely. Delighted to be here. I've been looking forward to this one. Good to be here, Charlie.
Excellent. And I know that, Louise, you're getting more and more prolific on the sort of podcasting sort of public speaking front. So yeah, hopefully your time on the Responsible Edge will be a good one. Let's start. I briefly mentioned you and what you're working on at the moment, but just for those listeners and viewers who aren't aware of the work that you're doing, just provide us with a little bit more context about your work.
Absolutely. So Air Aware Labs, I set up just over a year ago with my co-founder, Will Hicks. And what we are working on is trying to reduce the huge health burden of air pollution. So the World Health Organization estimates that around 8 million deaths are caused each year globally by air pollution, which is just extraordinary statistic. And there's very little out there that helps people to protect their health from this huge burden. So what we try and do is make air pollution data much more personalized for individuals so that they can understand what they're being exposed to at different times of day in different places, and therefore they can reduce their exposure to air pollution. So it's really about, per your topic for today, taking those environmental issues and making them real through connecting them to people's own health.
Louise, I have to admit, and by the way, that was beautifully introduced. And obviously for our listeners and viewers that want to check out your LinkedIn profile and want to check out Air Aware Labs, website, etc., they can obviously, we'll link to everything, but that was beautifully introduced. I have to admit, when I first met you and found out about the work that you're doing, it was one of those, when people produce sort of a very compelling problem and then just a very, very clean, and I know there's so much work that goes into the complexity of it, but a simple solution in many ways. So it all just married up and made sense to me when you described it before. We're going to obviously come on and talk about air quality in more depth and more detail and air pollution during the rest of our conversation. But for now, I want us to go back to the very origins, the beginnings of the story, if you like. And I want to give our listeners and viewers a sense of your journey and your experience to date. In particular, though, I'd love to ask you, can you recall and take us through some of those kind of formative childhood experiences as a young person that really helped shape your view of the world and ultimately influence the things that you've gone on to do in your career so far?
Yeah, it's a very deep question, Charlie. So I would say probably the most formative in terms of this interest in environment and human development, if you like, probably came from my time at university when I got very involved in what's known as the One World Group. So it was all about poverty reduction, sustainable development, the sort of bringing together people, planets, and profit in a sort of beautiful alignment. So there's always that kind of connection between outcomes for individuals, reducing the most extreme poverty and health problems for people, but at the same time protecting the planet, which without giving away my age too much, that was possibly not a kind of particularly common discussion at the time, that you could bring all of those things together. But I think in the last 10 years, I would say 10 to 15 years, that's a much more common narrative that we should be looking at that triple bottom line.
And it was beautifully described. What were you studying at university alongside this?
I was studying maths, but I was at the same time trying to have lots of fun doing lots of different things as well, and including this sort of environmental, social campaigning. Getting myself involved in as many different things as I possibly could.
And can you recall any particular sort of world events or any particular kind of personal experiences that really kind of lit that fire in you to explore these themes? Like, was there anything that just really struck you and just sort of, stopped you in your tracks, if you like, and made you see the sort of the inequality, the impact of the human species and the way that we were affecting our planet and our managing our people? Was there anything like that for you?
Well, straight after university, I spent some time in Colombia, which at the time was quite a difficult place to be. Lots and lots of different challenges. So that obviously, gave me a good insight into a whole range of things. I was working with a women's organisation, so also like the gender inequality aspects of pretty much everything that we could be concerned about. Issues around conflict and instability, but also obviously the huge environmental assets that Colombia has as well that they're aiming to protect. So yeah, that was quite a formative thing straight out of university. And then I spent 10, 15 years in Department for International Development working on lots of countries that had extreme levels of poverty, Sudan, Ethiopia, different parts of South Asia, seeing how all of these things really need to come together. And how environmental problems can drive conflict, and conflict can drive human lack of human development, and so on and so on.
Super interesting. And was there always, when you think back to young Louise, was there always this intention to go into working in government, or was that something that just through those experiences that you'd had where you saw these problems playing out, you felt like that was at the time the best use of your energy and your resource, if you like, to affect change? Talk us through like what led you into the political world.
I don't think there was ever a huge intention to do, it had to be this or it had to be the other. I'm afraid it was sort of more, oh, that looks interesting. Why don't I try that? But I would say, one thing that I reflect on now is, as I mentioned briefly, I did a maths degree, and I think if at the time there would have been more sort of socially relevant things for me to apply maths and use of data. I did a lot around statistics and applied statistics and things in my degree. If there'd been more that I felt I could have applied that to with an environmental or social angle, then I might have kind of run with that a bit more. But it didn't feel like that there were that many opportunities for it at the time. So I almost sort of set my maths background to one side. And I feel like now, it's sort of quite a few years later, I've come back round to that and able to use that sort of understanding of data for a very good purpose.
It's amazing, isn't it? I often speak to people that are, that allow their curiosity to sort of, allow them to lean into whatever that next experience is. But then when they get to a certain point in their career, they look at the sort of collection of tools and experiences that they've pulled together, and then it helps create or helps facilitate the next step, which clearly, as you've described, that's what you've managed to do. But let just talk us through what happens after your experience of working within government. What do you do next? And actually, no, before I ask that, you mentioned there weren't many opportunities when you came out of university for you to apply your master's degree. Was the possibility of being an entrepreneur and of starting your own business, was that at that time just completely not on the agenda for you? Or was it always sort of that niggling bit in your back of your mind that you thought you might do something like that one day?
I think, maybe a bit of a niggle, but no real sort of ways of like addressing that. I mean, a lot of my friends from university basically would have gone into big corporates was, probably the most common route, or continued in academia. A few of us went into government, but yeah, I can't really think of anybody who went in for an entrepreneurial career at that point. So I think it was probably a bit of a different world at that time, but it has always been a bit of a niggle for me as well. Yeah.
And so go on. And sorry, I throw two questions at you in one, which was tricky for you to unpack. But so you're in government. You've had this. How long did you work in government?
Yeah, so you are now making me give away my age, aren't you, Charlie? So I think I did 22 years in government.
One. Wow.
Before I actually took a career break, which is one of the nice flexibilities that you can have from that kind of job. And I started in this world of entrepreneurship about 18 months ago.
What did you do with your career break? What?
Well, this is the career break. I mean, this is, let's say, career break in inverted commas, a break to do something different. Still work extremely hard and develop my career, but it's a career break from government. Yeah.
I was going to say, Louise, that is testament to you and what I know of you. Yeah. That you're, I was expecting to hear, oh, I went off and I don't know, wrote a book or just did something else. But no, you've gone and created this whole, amazing business that you're working on now, which is quite something. Let me ask you, and thank you for now bringing us up to sort of speed with what you've with where you are with your career. Having worked in government for that long, what were the key lessons, or what are the key things that now you've gone into the entrepreneurial sort of stage in your career? What are the key lessons that you've drawn from that experience of working in government that have been helpful and useful in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. Actually, I've been thinking about that a bit this week because it's quite an unusual career path. So I like to try and find, ways in which actually it does make sense, and there are skills that can be transferred across, so that hopefully I can encourage others to give it a go as well. But yeah, I mean, I think probably the number one thing is through government you learn a lot of resilience and agility to switch direction, but not just for yourself. I mean, one thing that can be quite difficult is when you've got a new minister, a new policy, a different approach to something, and then pick your whole team up and start again, and just that kind of team resilience. I think is extremely relevant in government, and a very useful skill to bring for startups. I think there's a kind of seeing the big picture, understanding perhaps where macroeconomics is going and where regulation is going and things like that, but then also applying it to a practical problem and aiming to deliver something is also, I think, quite relevant. And then all the kind of collaboration skills as well. So, and this is one of the things I would say I've probably enjoyed the most in sort of building Aerobio Labs, is finding all of the different collaborations that we can, bring our skills to bear alongside other people's skills or networks or whatever it is that you can use to take your idea to scale. And I think government encourages that sort of collaboration as well. So yeah, that's come quite naturally.
Louise, that's super interesting. Well, again, as you say, hopefully what you've just shared there will encourage others that are operating in government to view their experience as being a brilliant foundation from which perhaps to look at this next stage in their career of going out there and affecting things from an entrepreneurial perspective. That was, I know, a whistle-stop tour introduction to you, but we'll leave it there for now. And obviously, as I mentioned, we'll linking to all your various websites and LinkedIn profiles, etc., so that people can go and read the full story if you like. But let's move forward now, if possible, Louise. Would you mind just providing a bit of a summary introduction to the article that I mentioned at the beginning of the show? Just picking out for you whatever you thought were the most interesting points from the piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was really pleased when you highlighted this article because, I mean, it regularly quotes the World Health Organization's work, and particularly somebody who we do interact with called Dermot, if I'm pronouncing his name properly. So yeah, I was really pleased to see the work. What I was surprised about when I went back and reread the article, because I read it through going, oh yeah, interesting, yeah, makes sense, yeah. And then I went back and looked at it again and realised it was actually from 2014, I think, so over a decade old. And it did give me pause for thought at that point of, well, have we moved on? How have we managed to tackle these things, which are still, you could write an article, a very similar article now, 11 years on. But I guess, so the things that stood out for me, as I say, like it did highlight the World Health Organization's leadership on all of this, which I think is an important thing to note, given the international challenges that the World Health Organization has. That it's not easy, but they are really showing a lot of leadership around the area of environmental health. I think just also the scale of the problem. So the biggest environmental threat to health, I think it mentions in the article 1 in 8 deaths caused by air pollution, which is similar levels to what we see now, unfortunately. What has changed in recent international statistics around this is we always used to say air quality was the 4th biggest cause of premature death. It's actually now usually quoted as the 2nd biggest, so just behind high blood pressure globally. So it's just getting more and more significant, really. But then the areas that the piece isn't just limited to air quality, which is obviously my kind of specialist topic, if you like, but it goes into the impact of heat, extreme heat as a result of climate change, things like changing patterns of malaria, that obviously is a major killer. Other issues around that we have to think about around climate change, flooding, and generally what kind of adaptation we need to bring to urban and other environments to be able to deal with the climate change challenge. And it also actually highlights short-lived climate pollutants, which is a bit of a mouthful, but this is essentially some of the pollutants like black carbon and methane, which are both major cause major climate impacts, but also impact human health. So there's been a lot of focus recently on short-lived climate pollutants, but I was maybe slightly surprised that even back in 2014 they were being highlighted as one of these things that if we can address that, we should be able to move forward on lots of different objectives.
Louise, that was brilliantly introduced. I should say, for any of our listeners and viewers that want to check out the original piece, we'll obviously provide links, etc., to it, so you guys can check it out. But Louise has basically highlighted, I think, all the most interesting and key points, and obviously highlighted the fact that it's over a decade old as well. Let me ask you, I'm going to start with a kind of a big question, if you like. We have conversations a lot on the Responsible Edge about how do we get the storytelling right around climate, and how do we actually create a narrative and a story, as you say, as I say, that really affects behavioral change. Is this it? Is the focus on health-related issues? Is this the opportunity in your mind?
I mean, I really think it works. Yeah, definitely. There will be people who are already convinced about, we need to act on climate, and they will do that at lots of different levels. But there's also a lot of people who aren't convinced, or a bit half-hearted about it, or have higher priorities in their minds. And I do think the health aspects really helps to land that. And I often think about when I hear Rosamund Kissy-Deborah, who's an amazing advocate and also a WHO ambassador, She always says this: don't talk about air pollution as a environmental issue, talk about it as health. I mean, the statistics stand for themselves in terms of, like, if you're looking across the board at health, you should be looking at air pollution as a major cause of ill health and something we need to do to improve our health prevention work. So I think it works on many levels.
So with that in mind, because I'm pleased that you've endorsed that, and again, it was just so amazing to hear that since this article was published, that air pollution has gone from, was it number 4 in terms of causing mortality to number 2 behind high blood pressure? I mean, that's an astonishing stat. So with this in mind, that we know this, we are aware of this. The evidence is just getting stronger and stronger as climate change takes greater and greater effect. That the health-related issues are core and fundamental. Why, in your mind, is this not more prevalent then in the narrative, in the discussion, in the discourse around climate? Like, what's stopping us from adopting, this line of storytelling?
I mean, people often talk about air pollution as being sort of the invisible killer, or, if you can't see it, then it's hard to act on it, or it's hard to understand what the impacts are, which I see to some extent. But then equally, like, climate change, it is a bit conceptual in some ways. Like, you can see its impacts, but also it's, you kind of, you have to believe and read the science and see what the future impacts are going to be. So it's not necessarily sort of right in front of your eyes. So it's, I ponder this quite a lot. I'm not sure, beyond it being invisible, why it is so hard to get across. I mean, there's sometimes a bit of a kind of feeling like, it's always going to be this way. If we want to have urban development, we're going to, people do want to drive their cars and so on, then is just a thing that we'll have to put up with. But hopefully, as a result of, like, the science getting clearer and clearer about what the impacts of air pollution are going to be, I hope that narrative might drop away a bit.
Do you know what? It's fascinating. I want to, again, humor me with this for a second. So I had a conversation, I think it was last week actually, with somebody, and we were talking about, when it comes to kind of climate storytelling from an environmental perspective, purely environmental perspective, the key was acknowledging that the scaremongering tactics, if you like, around environmental degradation, etc., like that clearly hasn't worked. Like, that isn't resonating with people at scale enough. And the point was made that what we need to do is we need to switch to a more, like, aspirational, optimistic view of imagine the world that we could create if we adopted, an environmentally aware approach to the development of our systems, etc. Which I totally get. Like, I think that makes sense. Like, you imagine this sort of utopian Garden of Eden aesthetic and narrative that we could build. But when it comes to this, for me, this is about, like, there surely should be more visual sort of stimulus, more commentary and narrative around, we need to wake up to the fact that people are dying as a result of this. And I don't know if I'm just living in my own little echo chamber and I've not seen it, but it seems to me that that's the sort of no-brainer approach to communicating these issues and identifying and highlighting the impact of climate change on health. So I've just thrown my thoughts at you, but just reflect on that for me.
It's difficult. I mean, I joined a really good conference a couple of months ago on communicating air quality, and some of it is just about, how do we present complex types of data and things like that, a bit more kind of technocratic. But in terms of the, like, how are you going to approach it? I think most people would come down to the side of, let's paint a positive future vision. Let's not scare everybody, because I mean, even though, like, the science is clear, there's still always that sort of level of, oh well, I'm still alive, and kind of disbelief that it's ever going to directly impact you as an individual. So I mean, it's there. Obviously, we can put across the science. It exists, and it's well evidenced. But in terms of kind of bringing people along on a mission, then painting a positive story of the kind of world we want to live in. And one of the reasons I got into this was really like I see myself as a diehard urban resident. I don't intend to move out of the city to avoid air pollution, as like many people do. But I wanted to, feel confident in that and think, well, this, I've made that choice. I want it to be a good choice for myself and my family. What can I do about that to reduce the impact of air pollution on myself and people around me? So it's really like, let's make urban living better, cleaner, healthier, greener, etc. Is really what it's all about.
Here. I love it. You've got your first here of the show, Louise. I hadn't for guests that I think nail particular points. I think it's such a compelling why to be building a solution for an experience that is so personal to you. And I think that's where founder stories really kind of hit home and resonate. So it's great to hear that there's that alignment there. I want to ask you about, you've obviously had, this career working in government and understanding the way that the political systems kind of work and how they're influenced. When it comes to policy relating to the health implications of climate change, like, what's your take on where we are in the UK, and what would you like to see happen next in order to help facilitate and address the kind of outcomes that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have my finger on the pulse, to be honest, of all of the climate and health policy stuff, but I do know that there is a lot of focus now on extreme heat and flooding, particularly. I know, the government and also had various local authorities leaders speak about that the other day, from Manchester and I think it was Manchester, Liverpool and London, all quite focused on extreme heat and flooding issues. So I'm kind of aware of all of that, but I'm not expert enough to know that to sort of say if it's going far enough or if they're missing bits or whatever. Obviously my expertise is around the air pollution side, and I do still, this is soapbox time, I do still think it's kind of underexplored in the policy level as well. I know there's an intention to bring out a revision of the clean air strategy, which is great. But will we hear ministers speak about it as much as they talk about other aspects of environment? I'm not seeing it yet. I know. I mean, there was obviously quite a political controversy for the Mayor of London around ULEZ, which obviously he was doing for air pollution reasons, but kind of got caught up with all sorts of other things and made it very like a difficult space to be in for a while. But it feels like that sort of the heat has come out of that politically at the moment. So I would just love to see ministers up talking about how they're going to improve our air quality. And as we know, all of these things are interlinked. So many of the same solutions that you want to bring to improve air quality will be the same as what you want to do to address climate change and increase biodiversity and everything else. So I'd love to see it a bit higher up the hierarchy of things that get discussed at senior levels.
Well, let's hope so. And let's hope that conversations like this are the sorts of things that can kind of stimulate that kind of awareness of the issue and the need to address it. I want to ask you a question about the role of business and the role of corporates from an air pollution perspective. And again, I'm going to throw this at you and you can tell me whether or not I've got it completely wrong, but is the whole positioning of kind of employee well-being and supporting employee well-being, is that the gateway, if you like, to get business and the business world to engage with this issue? Is that your thinking, or have I completely misconstrued how you're going about trying to engage with the commercial world?
Yeah, I mean, for us, yes, that is a big part of it, as well as so like we have a product which is aimed at the fitness sector, so it's aimed at helping people to reduce their exposure to air pollution when they're out doing running, cycling, walking outdoors, which is called AirTrack, by the way. Yeah, all the links will be provided.
Indeed. Louise,
But
sorry, that's
yeah,
fascinating. I'm going to jump in
yeah,
there. How does that
okay.
work? Does it like plot kind of where air pollution is worse, and kind of sort of, sort of takes you on routes that allow you to miss out on those particular areas? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, exactly. So so we launched the mobile app about 6 weeks ago, and yeah, it takes the high resolution air pollution modeling data and shows you around where you are doing an activity, what are the hotspots of air pollution, and also a thing that the users that we've spoken to find particularly useful is it shows the different times of the day and how much difference there is in the pollution levels at different times of the day and days of the week, which is that is really where you see the massive variation. So if there's anything you can do within your lifestyle to choose the best times of the day, that would have a big impact on your exposure to pollution.
Wow, that's
So yeah, so for our kind of corporate push, if you like, it's both employee well-being, so being able to offer that kind of product to employees, but also and anybody who's got a fitness offer, that if you're out there helping people to improve their fitness, we would say make sure you're doing that in the best possible way for their long-term health by reducing their exposure to air pollution as well. So yeah, so we're keen to talk to anybody in the fitness sector about this as a extra offer. But then, of course, I mean, for businesses as well, just like reducing their own emissions, air pollution and emissions is also crucial. So a lot of people will be reporting on their carbon emissions, but also and in some ways it goes hand in hand, and in some ways it's a bit different. But understanding your as a company, your nitrogen dioxide emissions, your contribution to particulate matter, and so on is also key. But yeah, we are more on the how does it impact the individual end of things.
it's fascinating. Louise, I feel like it's like, and I'm so pleased we're having this conversation because, in reality, there's commercial value in organizations looking at adopting the air quality issue as being core and fundamental to the way that they approach their people, the way that perhaps they approach their communication around their sustainability efforts, etc. It's such an opportunity for organizations out there that are trying to find whatever that sort of new thing is, if you like, that they can really sort of pin their stripes to the mast, if you like. So yeah, brilliantly described. Thank you so much for talking us through it. And as you mentioned, the apps, etc., we will absolutely be linking to all the various solutions that you guys are producing. But
Could I just add one quick thing on that train of thought, if that's okay? So we did a nice conference a week ago with a company called Mobility Ways, which is all about zero carbon commuting, which was great. And I had the opportunity to do a poll and ask people, do you think employers are taking on board issues around air pollution sufficiently? And the answer to that was a fairly resounding 92% thought, no, they're not. So like the gap is there, and we'd love it if we could switch it completely to the 92% say yes. But equally, if you are the employer who wants to show, you are different to the rest, you're taking on innovation, you're thinking about sustainability and health in the round. Yeah, go look at this as a way to something you can pin yourself to show your forward thinking approaches. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that, Louise, I think you've nailed it and well pitched, because what you've got is that brilliant scenario, if you like, of it being, and I know you, no, in fact, you know what? Let's just call a spade a spade. It's the untapped potential for
Uh-huh.
organizations to adopt this as a key cause and a key part of their sustainability initiatives, if you like. And then the direct impact that it has on its people. You brilliantly, in the earlier conversation talked about, and I think even the article talks about, it's so much more sort of immediate and impactful when we're trying to engage with people, when you're talking about asthma and heart attacks and heat stroke, or any other kind of ailments associated with climate change, than it is talking about perhaps some of the more traditional environmental issues. So it's a really untapped opportunity for any organization listening in that thinks, right, where
Absolutely.
portions of our time and energy and resource.
And the sustainability managers that we talk to, which is obviously our sort of generally our first way into companies, they, sometimes they're a bit frustrated that, they're not landing stuff with the rest of the organization. And this is a way to show, it hits productivity, it hits health, it hits fitness. You can use this to make the case, across your organization.
Louise, I am well and truly an advocate now for all things Airway Labs and the work that you're doing. I think is brilliant. I think it's a massive opportunity again for our, for the organizations that are listening in to check out what you're doing and look to adopt this. Let's conclude now with the magic wand question. I know that was just a whistle stop tour, flash in the pan, if you like, but super interesting insights gleaned from that article today. But magic wand. If I was to hand you a magic wand and you could change one thing about the commercial world this instant, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see companies look at air pollution across the board, look at their emissions, look at what that means for their employees, for their customers, and then use our data to help reduce that impact.
Well, you're going to get your second here. I think from everything I've learned about air pollution and air quality and the opportunity that is there, when you mentioned, very much at the beginning of the conversation around your experience at university and how you were made aware of this sort of the dynamic between planet, people, and profit. And actually, I think throughout our conversation today, what's really been highlighted is that looking at air quality and air pollution, it is something that really does allow for each of those three elements to coexist and to be addressed. So yeah, I'm fully on board, and I think it's a great magic wand suggestion. Louise, thank you so much for joining me this morning. That was absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself and we might be able to get you back on for another show. But for now, great to have you on.
Brilliant conversation. Thank you so much. And look forward to seeing it go live. Good to talk, Charlie.
And that's all for today's episode of The Responsible Edge. A huge thank you to Louise Thomas, CEO of Airway Labs, for joining me on today's show. As we've heard, climate action doesn't just save the planet, it can save lives. When we reframe sustainability as a health issue, we don't just win minds, we win hearts, lungs, and futures. This episode was brought to you by the Andrew Greenwash Charter, championing responsible sustainability communications. Visit andrewgreenwashcharter.com to learn more. I'm Charlie Martin. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. See you next time.